Chill Kill from Red Velvet. Man, it's been a while since I checked out any Red Velvet. Yeah, this is interesting. It's quite an intriguing title for a song, and I have no idea. So let's just see what they've done with this new song.
어디서 왔니 호련해 고요했던 세상에 cry 즐기다 등장 마치 밴드 그 자리 탐에 미쳤어 달콤해진 오류 불안전해 잠이 뭐가 겁났겠어 always and forever 너무 쉬운 넌 내 거라 맘대로 감고 멋대로 보냈어 다시 네가 보고 싶어 죽도록 후회하잖아 Don't care if your heart hurts 내게 어울리는 perfect song 다시 널 붙잡을 수 있을까 Don't think about tomorrow 넌 여전히 반짝여 변할 거야 이제서야 눈물이 흘러 얼음을 녹여 What a chill kill I know you will bring me lightning like a winner 여기서 널 기다려 happy ending으로 What a chill kill 긴 버튼들을 켜 네가 길을 지어 혹독한 밤이라 온 세상은 숨죽여 날 잘못 길들여 나밖에 몰랐지 왜 그리 작은니 내게 자격이 없다 멀리 멀리 도망치며 미워한다고 외쳐 그 말의 끝에 망설였잖아 눈을 맞춰줬잖아 거칠고서 tonight swear 자극된 밤을 대자 봐봐 많이 달라졌지 내가 자꾸 변했지 널 한 번 더 알릴 수 있을까 Don't think about tomorrow 넌 여전히 반짝여 변할 거야 이제서야 눈물이 흘러 얼음을 녹여 What a chill kill I know you will bring me lightning like a winner 여기서 널 기다려 happy ending으로 What a chill kill now are you ready now are you ready 너 때문에 울지 않아 너 때문에 웃을 수밖에 없던 거야 오렌지 빛에는 걸 처음으로 너의 용기만 필요해 Until the end And the time Don't think about tomorrow 넌 끝없이 반짝여 이제서야 눈물이 흘러 그 얼음을 녹여 Don't think about tomorrow Forget about your sorrow 변할 거야 너는 날 못 떠나 눈물이 흘러 그 얼음을 녹여 Don't think about tomorrow 끝없이 반짝여 변할 거야 난 이제야
I think this is one, like, okay, so the way this video starts out anyways, it's one of the more like grounded Red Velvet, it like it feels more real. The opening shots, moving the furniture around, a lot of this diegetic sound, the texture of the scraping across the wood floor, creaks and like things that feel very tangible, very like solid, and it stays fairly grounded all the way up until the end there. Then it starts to take on this, more like fictional type of quality, right? But it seems as though they have conspired to take some guy out, and they almost like seem to be getting away with it, right, for a while, but then at the end it's like, oh no, actually, there was a bust, right? Like somebody found out, and the cops started looking, and that's, they sort of meet that at the end there. But it's interesting how like visceral and tactile the whole thing is. It's not some interdimensional thing. I mean, like that's very subtle, right? Like there obviously is some supernatural element to it. In the beginning, it's like they're doing some sort of summoning circle. Presumably the guy that was taken out, perhaps. And it's interesting. I've been watching a lot of these videos lately about, real things that happen, murders and kidnappings and, crimes and stuff like this that are kind of mysterious because people can't figure out what's going on for a long time. And there's little clues here and there. And then, it might be years or some amount of time that goes by, but somebody like finally puts everything together, and then you get this story that unfolds of like, how did you started off with something that was very normal, and then because of whatever sort of motivations or even sort of unplanned events, things totally veer away from like what's normal or everyday life, and it ends up being this fairly dramatic arc. And there's a lot of dramatic scenery in this as well, but there's a very grounded, like in the world, in the flat type of feel to this one. You know what I mean? It's an interesting song structure. There's a bit of like that 80s sort of ballady, new wave type of feel to it. There's a great use of rhythm, especially in the vocals. There's a little bit of play with shuffle rhythms and percussion, and then the bridge section was like, what's going on? I mean, it really started to be like an 80s movie then, you know what I mean? And even the scenery where they have the old camera and they're recording stuff, it almost took on like a Stranger Things type of vibe at that point. So there's a combination of some different styles and elements and things that's going on, but it's quite interesting. It's very cool. It's like, it's Red Velvet for sure. Like it feels like a Red Velvet song, but a little bit of a different angle on it, similar to like what aespa's been doing lately, right? Where it's, I mean, they kind of took some detours, some different directions altogether. And because the voices, of course, okay, this is still aespa, but they're reaching into different areas and stuff that they haven't been to before. And this is more of the feeling or the expression, and not like fully the style, because there's some things in here that are definitely familiar to Red Velvet listeners, you know. So okay, the clattering, the moving of the furniture around, there's a high pitched like scree sound that's going. I don't know if you guys can hear that too. I thought it was a problem that I was having. I was like, let me mute the mic real quick. Like, what's going on here? But no, it's intentionally in there. It's this high pitched tone that is like a byproduct of something, right? So something's off, like something's not quite dialed in here. It's like feedback, you know. So what they've done, okay, so they've moved all this stuff out of the way, right? They've created this space now, and then they're positioning this chair, right? But they're not going to sit on it, right? So what they're doing, they're summoning something. And they're recording. You heard that, and then the tape reel running. So like a very sort of dreamy chime arpeggiator that's going on. It's a pretty quick tempo, but then you start to get the actual quarter note hits that come in, right? And it's really just playing the root of the chord, sort of establishing the progression, a little bit of a vocal lick, right, to get started. It sounded like there was some staccato strings in there, like just before the first verse kicks off. And then we have this kick and a bass pairing, which is fairly common. But you have a stretching of time. This is a thing where you're not sticking to downbeats, but it isn't like a dance-like rhythm either. You have some quarter notes, maybe with some half notes in there that you can hear in the bass voice, right? In this sort of wonky 808 bass. It's a little bit wobbly, and you'll get quarter notes, and then the end of the measure will have 16th notes, boo doo 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 doo, right? And a forienda. So it's like there's a lot of space, and then it's kind of rushed because there's a sort of a tight grouping of the subdivisions, right, of the notes. So it's playing around with the feel of time a little bit here. So a little bit of triplet notes there, right? Da 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 da, and then eighth notes, one and dun 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 dun. Staying fairly consistent with the rhythm, but getting sort of waltz-like with it, getting a little bit more dance-like with it in some of the beats here, and then there's it's like really tiny bells, right? These ding 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 ding, sort of eighth note chime sound that's going on, but it's very tinny, like very ringy. Big bass descending. The arpeggiator came back, that sort of chiming arpeggiator. And then the percussion started to ramp up too, right? It gave us a little shuffle rhythm, and then it just went on full on 16th notes, right? Very nice build up, and this is one of the more interesting pre-chorus sounds that I've heard in a while. Anyways, it's quite a dramatic build up. So right there, da, 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 and then moving up, like it feels very chromatic, right? It might be just a second, da, 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 moving up, da, 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 and then it's gonna kind of drop back down a little bit too. But it's a really it's very striking, that interval, as if you know, it doesn't. It sounds like maybe a just going up a major second or something. So there's a little bit of dissonance. There's a feeling of tension and pushing it up a little bit higher, right? And then it's going to sort of back off a little bit. So it's starts to take on that 80s ballad feel when it does this. Those are some crazy high notes. Hold on. Is that soothing? That was a really high part, man. That was like not easy to sing. And now we got this dial. You know what this reminds me of almost is something like Carol of the Bells or something like. They might be using 6 chords. Then there's something about it that feels nostalgic and almost like that Christmassy type of vibe, right? But not a major sound. I think it's a minor sound, so it's a little bit more like haunting, you know. It's a very interesting sound, man. Like this is, it's an unconventional texture. Strings. There's these little licks that are going on, string sounds. I hear it in the left ear. And it's interesting because at this point in the video too, this is a dramatic scene, right? So there's these real quick trilly runs on the strings that are, you know, they're supposed to be like stabbing like that. It's old school movie, you know, like type of vibe, like when a scene is dramatic and like the quick string flourishes and stuff to make it seem like stabbing, like cutting. The reverb on the vocal there really ramps up, you know, as that bass is doing that sort of slide down. The vocal line there takes on there's a ton of reverb, man. All of a sudden it sounds like singing through some sort of, you know, tube like shape or something. Massive drums here. So this huge, right, like the expansion of space all of a sudden, right, it becomes like this big gigantic, you know, resonant sound. The absolute splash on like thick drums, right? It's not like a very tight envelope around these hits or whatever. It's like boom, 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 bah. I mean, like it's a big kick and snare hit, and then it also has all this splashy reverb that's on it. And the vocal, it goes, you know, the first line sounds there's some reverb on it, and there's some of that spatial sort of production on it, but it's up front, And then all of a sudden, it's like everybody's singing in the back of the room, like it's in this big open space, and you've got all the singers lined up in the back, and they're singing. You can really feel like this, the way it's arranged in the mix. If the drums are even like out in front of the vocal sound that's going on. It's a crazy like trick to play with the space. Up front vocal, in the back. It's a room reverb. Like, man, it's crazy. It's very cool. Okay, so you know what I mean? Like, so they're gonna burn the place down, right? I mean, you got like gas cans here, but they took a bus. I mean, okay, so obviously they carried out the plan, right? And it looks like they want to get rid of the evidence, right? Again with the sound, right? Like this diegetic environmental sound. Sounding like an 80s ballad, you know what I mean? Like that chime comes in, ba-da-da-da, with those big drums again, right? Like that didn't go away. I'm probably in the album version of this. There isn't a cut, obviously, for the bus scene, so it probably just goes straight through. So after you hear the sort of spatial shift in the voice, in the vocals that are going on, the harmony moves away to the back, and that drum sound is present. So that drum sound continues, and after that vocal harmony goes, then you get hit with the chime sound. Boom ta, boom boom ta. Big synth chords. And the vocals, of course, very much the climactic scene, right? The high point as far as all the vocal work. Some absolutely crazy runs here. Reaching up into that upper register like it did earlier, but with a lot more projection and full voice this time. I mean, this is a really dramatic part of the story. There. Oh, did she know? So was it when this sort of chorus part comes back in, right? Don't think about tomorrow. That descending bass, that sliding bass, right, was going boo, but there was much more going on. Like the rhythm section was completely filled out, and the vocal harmonies were, you know, much more front and center in the mix. It just had so much more body to it. So a very dramatic sort of climax point of the song, the high point in the bridge. And then it comes back into its chorus section with a lot of energy and with a lot of body and presence. And it was like in the scenery we're seeing, they thought they were going to get away with it. Like they were, you know, running away from the house, and they were smiling and like, ah, yeah, we did it. But it seemed like she knew, didn't it? Like when that part, right? Look at this right here, this scene right here. It looks like she's like, yeah, I knew this was going to happen. Like, you know, and she just drops the bag. Oop, there it is. As if to say, like, this is what you're looking for. Like, you're going to find all the evidence, you know, in this bag right here. It's really interesting, man. It's really interesting. This is a very sort of unexpected, texture, song structure, song style. Even this, okay, an old camcorder, VHS tapes, this old, aspect ratio on this television set here. So there's a lot of nostalgia. There's a lot of throwback to like 80s, sound and visual and aesthetic. And the 80s was the the sort of like when we got a lot of the slasher horror movies, right? Like your Jason and Nightmare on Elm Street and things like that. So it seems to be kind of like the concept here, or like a take on that, sort of variation on that. It even matches, the sort of like house in the woods, like where Jason lived or whatever, this secluded place in the woods where something happens, something, nefarious, and like somebody died, right? And then, you know what I mean? And it just, it's like the origin story, like as if there were like slasher films and, you see the character, but you don't know where they came from. And then in the sequel, or sometimes in the beginning, the first installment, you'll get a backstory, like, oh, well, this happened actually, like in the, he was born there, and then this thing happened and they killed somebody, so he's been out for revenge ever since. I mean, it's that type of story that's going on, kind of. It's very cool, though. It's very cool. It was completely unexpected. Like, it is a sort of throwback concept, but there's some very cool use of like a combination of sounds right in the mix, the sort of wobbly 808 bass, but then that like massive drum sound, that almost like stadium ballad sort of drum sound that's going on, the chromaticism and the ascending sort of vocal lines right in the chorus section. There's some fantastic high vocal melodies in the bridge section. That's really impressive. That's one of the most melodic and very sort of romantic period. Like there's a quality to this song, especially in the vocals, that is very classical. Like this, they're not leaning into like the most current new type of styles here. This is they're kind of just really sort of enjoying things that are probably what they like more than that. I mean, everybody has something that's like comfortable to them, that they feel it's fun to listen to, it's fun to sing, it's fun to, what I mean, like it's just the vibe or whatever, even though it might not be the current thing, right? So not being afraid to just be original and sort of go with whatever you feel is correct or the most enjoyable type of expression, but it's a interesting structure and have an interesting combination of sounds and different stylistic inspirations, right? Like the actual motifs and the way that it's constructed. It's was not expecting to hear something like this. It's a little bit haunting, but also a little bit romantic, and like the highs are really high and it feels this triumphant ballad or whatever, but then there are certain points where it's like it gets very dark and nostalgic, and the messing around with time, the feeling of the expanding and contracting time, and then also space, like having certain parts of the song be much tighter in terms of reverb and the different applications to create a sense of space, and then just sort of exploding it into this like massive cavernous type of feel. So rather than showing you a scene of like moving between worlds and realities and making it this, high production, take on it visually, it's happening mostly in the sound. There playing with time, playing with space. There's definitely an expression of some of that, their multiverse, which, type of concept, right? Like, there are these intergalactic witches or however, so they can slide from one reality to another, and they can cast spells, and they can do all this stuff, and it's in there, but it's all in the sound. The visual stays very grounded. It's like this is in one universe. This is taking place on this version of the world, and it's local to that. Look, they're not going to jump here or there or go to another place, but they are taking you to the boundaries as far as what's going on with the actual song structure. It's like surface tension, right? Like if you can imagine that you can move from one reality into the next, this is walking right up to the boundary of it, and like you're very much anchored to your own reality, but you're undeniably made aware of the other side. Like there is another place that's out there, but they don't really cross it. They might be alluding to that, they might be suggesting it, but they don't really cross it. And it's interesting to me just how visually the whole thing is contained and very grounded and so tactile. They even, the idea of the cops, catching up is that there's consequences. There's a scheme or a plot that's at work here, but there's real implications. There's gravity, right? Like you're going to do something, and it's going to cause a ripple of effects that's, you might encounter it later on down the line. Like you did it back there and you thought it was cool, but you didn't know that you caused this wave to go out, and now it's coming back in. It's really interesting, right? It kind of stays on this even plane with what it's representing visually, but as far as the sound that you're hearing, there's definitely ideas of manipulating space and time and finding access to maybe alternate realities, the past. Like it's quite interesting, man. It's quite interesting, but it's very cool. They sound incredible. The harmonies and some of these vocal lines in here are just off the charts. So like some of the most powerful, that I've heard, and even like among Red Velvet songs. So there are certain songs that stand out, certain parts, certain Red Velvet tracks, but it's very much like a demonstration of very, very powerful vocals, and accurate too. Some of these runs are quite complex, and to hit the notes, accurately in terms of pitch, is quite impressive. But I mean, they're Red Velvet, man. They're good. They absolutely can deliver on incredible vocals. And it's interesting. It's a very cool, comeback, and sort of, it's similar to aespa's drama in that it feels like the beginning, right? So in the drama video, it gave me this impression that it's a prelude to something. This is only like the first scene of the first act, and it was very much left unresolved. And then this has a similar sort of thematic aspect in its concept, because this is like the origin story. This is just the beginning of the movie, right? And then, like, if you were watching a movie, the cops get there, and then it goes to black, and then the credits start rolling, and it's like, oh, now we're watching the movie now. Okay. So it's interesting. They're definitely like indicating that something is going to happen. Something's on the way. And this is just the introduction to it. But it's very cool, man. It's very cool. Red Velvet, Chill Kill. Now, unanticipated sound, really unexpected song structure, but also very enjoyable. Like, I'm very interested to know what happens next, right? There's some of that tension that again is sort of left unresolved, and the visual accompanying this song here, the video, kind of alludes to that. Like, when you're left on a little bit of a cliffhanger as far as like what happened. Well, I guess we're just gonna have to stay tuned. But it was awesome, man. The vocals are actually quite intense, and it doesn't give you the impression from the visual, and even a lot of the song, like, it's written to kind of lull you into this, laid back space, a little dreamy, a little nostalgic, right? But there's some really intense melodies that are going on, and some very full harmonies too. So a lot of power, a lot of projection and voice, right? The just the air behind it. It's very, very strong. So it's interesting, man. Chill Kill.